As the sun sets and most people head home, a different world awakens. Night shift workers clock in, stepping into quiet, dimly lit spaces where every sound seems amplified. For many, the night brings a sense of calm, but for others, it's the start of unsettling experiences. Tonight, we'll explore real horror stories from those who brave the darkness to keep the world running while the rest of us sleep. Their tales are chilling, mysterious, and sometimes downright terrifying. Let's begin our journey into the unknown, where shadows stretch long and the imagination runs wild. Hospitals at night can feel especially eerie. One nurse recalls walking down a silent corridor, the only sound her footsteps echoing off the walls. Suddenly she heard a faint whisper behind her, but when she turned, no one was there. The lights flickered and a cold chill ran down her spine. She hurried back to the nurse's station, heart pounding, only to find her colleagues had heard the same whispers on other nights. Was it just exhaustion or something more sinister lurking in the hospital's shadow? Security guard working the graveyard shift in an office building often found himself alone. One night, while making his rounds, he noticed a door ajar on the top floor. As he approached, he heard the unmistakable sound of typing, but the office was empty. The computers were off and the chairs were all neatly pushed in. He checked the security cameras, but nothing unusual appeared. Still, the sound of invisible fingers on keyboards haunted him for weeks. Warehouse workers often describe the vast, echoing spaces as unsettling at night. One worker reported seeing shadows darting between the stacks of boxes, always just out of sight. Sometimes he'd hear footsteps following him, but when he turned, there was no one. The feeling of being watched became so intense that he started carrying a flashlight everywhere, but the shadows never revealed their source. Cleaning crews often work alone in large buildings after hours. One cleaner shared a story about a particular floor that always made her uneasy. She'd hear doors creaking and the sound of someone humming, even though she was the only one scheduled. One night she saw a figure pass by a glass door, but when she checked, the hallway was empty. She started requesting to clean that floor with a partner. Elevators can be creepy at night, especially in tall buildings. A night shift worker recalled an elevator that would stop on random floors with no one inside. Sometimes the doors would open to an empty hallway, but the worker swore he saw a shadow move just out of sight. After a few incidents, he started taking the stairs instead, even if it meant climbing 10 flights. Gas station attendants working overnight shifts often deal with strange customers, but sometimes the fear comes from something else. One worker described seeing a car pull in, but when he went outside, the lot was empty. Security footage showed the car, but it vanished without a trace. The worker never forgot that night and always kept the doors locked after midnight. Hotel night staff often hear stories from guests, but sometimes they experience the unexplained themselves. One receptionist received repeated calls from a room that had been vacant for weeks. When she checked, the room was empty and the phone unplugged. Maintenance couldn't find a fault. The calls continued for several nights before stopping as mysteriously as they began. Stocking shelves at night can be monotonous, but one supermarket worker had a chilling experience. While restocking, she saw a figure in the security mirror, but when she turned, no one was there. Items would fall off shelves with no explanation, and the automatic doors would open and close on their own. She began to dread her night shifts, always feeling like she wasn't alone. Factories are noisy during the day, but at night, every sound stands out. One worker heard footsteps echoing across the empty floor, but he was the only one on shift. The footsteps would stop whenever he looked around, only to start again when he returned to work. Eventually, he started listening to music to drown out the unnerving sounds. Delivery drivers often travel deserted streets at night. One driver shared a story of dropping off a package at an old house. As he walked back to his truck, he saw someone watching from an upstairs window. When he looked again, the figure was gone. The house had been abandoned for years, according to neighbors. He never took that route again. Parking lot attendant described seeing people walking through the lot late at night, only to vanish when approached. Sometimes cars would appear in spaces that were empty moments before. The attendant began to wonder if the lot was haunted, especially after hearing stories from coworkers about similar sightings. Basements are unsettling, especially in hospitals. One orderly had to retrieve supplies from the basement late at night. As he descended, he heard a child laughing echoing off the concrete walls. The basement was supposed to be empty. He rushed back upstairs, heart racing, and avoided the basement whenever possible after that night. A radio DJ working overnight shifts described hearing static and strange voices on the air, even when no one was calling in. Sometimes, the studio lights would flicker, and equipment would malfunction for no reason. The DJ started to wonder if the station was picking up more than just radio waves in the dead of night. Working nights can be isolating. Many workers report feeling watched or uneasy, especially during the quietest hours. The lack of sunlight and human interaction can play tricks on the mind, making every creak and shadow seem more sinister. For some, the loneliness is the scariest part of the night shift. A janitor working in a school at night found a classroom door locked from the inside. He heard movement and faint voices, but when he called for help and the door was forced open, the room was empty. The janitor never got an explanation, and the incident became a whispered legend among the staff. Night nurses in nursing homes sometimes hear whispers and see shadows moving in rooms where residents have recently passed away. One nurse described feeling a cold breeze and hearing her name called, but no one was there. She believes some spirits linger, keeping the night staff on edge. Call center agents working overnight sometimes receive calls with only static or silence on the other end. One agent reported hearing faint breathing and a child's voice, but the number was untraceable. The calls would always come at the same time each night, leaving the staff unnerved. A librarian working late described hearing books fall and seeing lights flicker in the stacks. Sometimes she'd catch a glimpse of a figure out of the corner of her eye, but the library was empty. These occurrences became so frequent that she started leaving early whenever possible. Taxi drivers working nights sometimes pick up passengers who vanish before reaching their destination. One driver described a woman who got in, gave an address, then disappeared from the back seat at a red light. When he checked, the seat was cold, as if no one had been there at all. IT staff working overnight shifts often monitor empty offices. One technician noticed a monitor flickering with static even though the computer was off. When he approached, the screen displayed a message, "Leave now." He unplugged the monitor, but the message appeared again the next night. A hotel housekeeper found a bathroom door locked from the inside during her night shift. She heard water running and someone crying, but when maintenance opened the door, the room was empty and dry. The housekeeper avoided that floor from then on. Retail workers restocking at night sometimes notice mannequins in different positions than they left them. One worker swore she saw a mannequin's head turn as she walked by. She started avoiding the display area, especially after hearing similar stories from coworkers. A bank security guard responded to a silent alarm in the middle of the night. When he arrived, the vault was open, but nothing was missing. The cameras showed no one entering or leaving. The guard never found out what triggered the alarm, but he always felt uneasy in the vault after that. A hospital nurse checked on a patient during her rounds, but the bed was empty. She searched the floor only to find the patient back in bed minutes later, confused and unaware they'd left. This happened several times, always during the night shift. A hotel front desk worker received a call that wouldn't disconnect. The line was filled with static and faint voices, but no one responded. Even after hanging up, the phone would ring again with the same eerie sounds. The calls stopped at sunrise. A gym night manager found a locker locked from the inside. He heard banging and muffled voices, but when he opened it, the locker was empty. The incident became a favorite ghost story among the gym staff. A night shift worker at an animal shelter saw a dog running through the halls, but when she tried to catch it, the dog disappeared. No dogs were missing and security footage showed nothing. The staff started calling it the shelter ghost dog. A cemetery night watchman found the main gate unlocked even though he'd checked it earlier. He heard footsteps among the graves but saw no one. The gate would sometimes be open again by morning with no explanation. Night shift workers face more than just fatigue and loneliness. Their stories remind us that the darkness can hold both real and imagined fears. Whether it's unexplained noises, vanishing figures, or the weight of isolation, these tales show the courage it takes to work through the night. As the sun rises, the shadows retreat, but the memories of those chilling hours linger long after the shift ends.